Everyone, and welcome to Carrie's Garage. And on this episode, it's Project Z Car Revival, Episode 3. Let's get started right after this. So we've got a few things we can do on the Z Car project today. We can see if the engine will turn over, which I think it will. I don't see why it wouldn't. Everything's been sitting in lubrication for a while, so it should be good. We did get the brand new lock cylinder switch and everything, so we're going to go ahead and get this put in, take a look at the wiring, make sure everything looks okay, or I don't know, I might need to do some of that. And then we can start to take a look at the fuel system. Starter isn't in yet, still waiting for it. It got stuck in transit, so hopefully I'll see it next week, and then we can put that in. But to start, let's go ahead and put this in, and then we'll move over to turning the engine over by hand. So overall, this should be pretty easy. So let's go ahead and pull the cap off. See how much of this I can do one-handed. I probably need to set up the camera. Oops. And it goes right in there on the steering column. On the other side, it has a hole cut into it for the steering wheel lock. So let's see. Basically, it goes something like, let's see. The key needs to point out this way. Goes up into here, kind of something kind of like that. So let me go ahead and loosely put it in, get it lined up, and then I'll show you and we'll get it tightened up. Okay, so I loosely have it put in now. It still kind of flops around. What I did is I took the key out. So what that did is it engaged the steering wheel lock. So let's see, let me get you a little bit closer so you can see. So there's a hole right here that the steering wheel lock actually goes into and locks in the column. So what I'm going to do is get it centered, get it to where the steering wheel locks and it's in place, and then I'll tighten it down. Well, it's now in. It's mostly dug down. Also found the wiring clipped right into place. So I'm going to have to go ahead and put a battery in it, make sure it all works. But you put it in and it locks. And I was looking at the plastic trim panel that goes underneath here, kind of loosely put into place. It was modified a little bit, but for now I think it'll work. I'll just put it back in and it'll be decent. One of the last things to do is there's these two safety screws right here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, now that I know it's in place, what you do is you tighten it up, and right when it gets to a certain torque, it breaks off. So then it's anti-tamper, so you can't mess with it. So now that the ignition switch and steering lock column are all put into place, what we'll go ahead and do is just rest this guy back into place. Ish. And we'll go ahead and grab this one. And I need two hands to do this to get it started, and then I'll show you what it looks like. And there we go. It's not perfect. A couple of the screws are a little stripped out, but the plastic's a little bit brittle. But we go ahead and got the ignition switch in. Like I say, it doesn't sit quite right, but for now it'll work. And the key. And there we go. All right, so we're back under the hood. Got the valve cover off, got all the spark plugs out again, because like I said, I just had them there to keep stuff in there from getting in. So I'm gonna go ahead and set you guys up, and then I'm gonna climb up underneath with the socket and my ratchet and start spinning the engine over. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and climb under the car now. Let's take a look. Well, I honestly didn't think it was gonna be a problem, but the engine spun over great. Nothing felt like it was sticking. I checked all the valves and everything's opening and closing, so I think we're good. So what we'll go ahead and do is, when we get the starter, is I'll leave the spark plugs out. We're going to put fresh oil in our oil filter, and we're going to spin it over a bunch and make sure everything is still nicely lubricated, get all the oil pressure built up. And next up, which I think we're going to do right now, if I can do it, is we're going to see if we can activate the fuel pump and pump out the fuel tank, if it even turns on. If it doesn't, we're going to have to replace the pump, but let's see what happens. All right, so I have one of my batteries that I just use for randomly starting cars, or just using for testing. Got a battery charger hooked up to it. The starter, there's no starter, so the wiring's just kind of hanging there, but they're perfectly fine, nothing's touching. Got the fuel pressure inlet off the filter into a bottle. One thing before we even try and start this car is all the pressure lines are going to need to be replaced. These are super brittle and starting to flake. So let's go inside the car, see if it powers on, and see if the fuel pump makes any noise whatsoever. All right, so let's see if anything happens. Well, got the door chime dinger, which on these is very entertaining. It's that bell. And if we turn the key to the start position, it should engage the fuel pump. Which nothing is happening. So I have a feeling, I think the fuel pump is dead. Yep, but hey, at least everything turns on, which is good. All right, well, I verified the fuel pump is very dead. So I figured out that this right here is input to the fuel pump. Basically, just kind of bypass the secondary relay. And the fuel pump relay does click. Probably can't hear it. But I also went back to the fuel pump itself and verified voltage is going to the fuel pump, so nothing's happening. What I'm going to have to do is get the car off the trailer, get it jacked up, and then get that fuel pump out and see if we can drain out the tank as much as we can and get the replacement fuel pump in and see if we can't get it going. I had a pretty good feeling the fuel pump was going to be shot. You know, with the certain amount of ethanol they have in the fuel nowadays, and then it sits, it turns into varnish, it locks up the fuel pumps. That's why I was saying the injectors are probably pretty jacked up too. So once we get the fuel pump replaced, they're gonna have to see if the injectors need to be replaced, which is fine. If they do, we'll just go ahead and get new. So I think for now we're gonna go ahead and end the episode there because I've got a bunch of stuff that I just can't really do right now. I need to hook up the Suburban, take the car off the trailer, and we'll go do that later. I just wanted to do a few things, but the engine turns over, everything looks really good. Got the ignition switch put in, the wiring, everything looks good under there. So once we get the fuel pump in, we can mess around with the fuel system, and then got to wait for the starter. So hopefully that'll be here on Monday. But thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.